The night Claire decided to follow her husband, she had already written the speech in her head. She had been rehearsing it for 3 weeks. The confrontation, the questions, the specific, devastating calm of a woman who has run out of the energy to pretend she doesn't see what she's seeing. She knew what she was going to find. She had been watching the signs long enough that the not knowing had become worse than any answer could be. Late nights, 3 or 4 a week, sometimes not home until midnight. Phone calls taken in the garage, door closed, voice low. Withdrawals from their joint account that were never explained. Small amounts at first, then larger again. A man who used to ask about her day, who had become a man who kissed her on the cheek and disappeared into another part of the house. She sat in her car down the street from his office at 7:15 on a Thursday evening and watched him come out. She was ready. She followed him for 20 minutes through the city, through neighborhoods she recognized and then through ones she didn't, until he turned onto a road she had never been on, a quiet street on the edge of town where the buildings stopped and the land opened up. He pulled over. She pulled over further back, turned off her lights. And then she sat in the dark, watching her husband get out of his car and walk toward a half-built house with a contractor who was holding blueprints and a flashlight. And something in Claire's brain, which had been running one story for 3 weeks, stopped. Because the story she had been running did not contain this. And the story it was about to replace it with was one she was completely, entirely unprepared for. Stay with me. Because what Claire found out in the next 30 minutes changed everything she thought she knew about her husband and about herself. This story is going to be something special, and I need you to stay for all of it. Like this video right now. Those likes genuinely matter, and they cost you nothing. Subscribe too. It's free. Drop a comment, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Now back to Claire sitting in that dark car. Claire and Daniel Marsh had been married for 9 years. They were the kind of couple that other people pointed to at dinner parties, in the way that couples are pointed to before something goes wrong, and then people say they never saw it coming, which is usually untrue. They had met at work, both in financial services, different companies, introduced by a mutual colleague at a work event who had thought they might get on and had been right in the way that introductions rarely are. They had gotten on. Immediately, completely, in the specific way of people who recognize the shape of someone else's thinking and find it familiar. They had dated for 2 years, married quietly, bought a house, had a daughter named Lily, who was now 6, and who had her father's patience and her mother's absolute refusal to let anything drop. They had been, for 7 of those 9 years, genuinely happy. The 8th year was when Claire's mother, Ruth, was diagnosed. Ovarian cancer, stage 3. Discovered at a routine appointment that had almost not happened, because Ruth was the kind of woman who scheduled everyone else's medical care and forgot her own. The oncologist had been careful and clear, and the treatment plan was aggressive because the situation called for it. Ruth lived alone in a small flat that had 3 steps at the entrance, no lift, and a bathroom that was not going to work for someone going through chemotherapy. She was 67 and fiercely independent, and the diagnosis had been the first time Claire had seen her mother frightened. Claire had wanted to move Ruth in with them. Their house had a spare room. It had a downstairs bathroom. It made sense. Daniel had said, "Let me look into something." That had been 8 months ago. 8 months ago was when the late nights had started. Daniel Marsh was 41 years old and had spent 12 years building a small but successful financial technology company, a transaction processing platform used by mid-sized businesses across 4 regions. It was not a name anyone recognized publicly, but in its industry it was well regarded and profitable, and Daniel had built it with the specific, patient persistence of someone who had started it because he believed in the idea and had continued it because the idea kept proving him right. He was a quiet man who meant what he said, which was rarer than it should be. He did not make promises he hadn't thought through. He did not express emotions he didn't feel. When he told Claire he loved her on ordinary Tuesday evenings over dinner, it was not habit. It was because he had thought about it, and it was true, and he saw no reason not to say so. He was also, Claire had been increasingly sure for 3 weeks, hiding something significant. The phone in the garage, the account withdrawals, the late nights, the specific way he had started asking after Ruth, with a frequency and detail that had initially felt like love and had recently started feeling, to Claire's exhausted and suspicious mind, like he was tracking something. She had started a list, as evidence. She had written it in her phone's notes app, 14 items over 3 weeks, each one a data point in a case she was building against the man she had married. She had been ready to present that list. She was sitting in her car outside a half-built house in the dark. The list suddenly felt very different. Claire did not get out of the car immediately. She sat for 10 minutes watching Daniel and the contractor, a stocky man in a high-visibility vest, walk around the house with a flashlight, stopping at various points, the contractor gesturing, Daniel nodding, both of them occasionally looking at the blueprints. The house was single-story. That was the first thing she noticed. Fully single-story, wide footprint, the kind of layout that was not common in this area where land was expensive, and builders went up rather than out. The entrance was wide, wider than standard. She got out of the car. She did not call out. She walked toward the building slowly, keeping back enough that they hadn't noticed her yet, and she looked at what was being built. The entrance ramp. She could see it now. Where the step would normally be, there was the beginning of a poured concrete ramp, gentle gradient, wide enough for a wheelchair. The downstairs bathroom was visible through what would be a window frame. She could see the fixture positions, the wider doorway clearance, the bedroom positioning, all on one floor, all accessible from a central hallway that had been designed with turning radius in mind. Claire's hand came up to her mouth. Daniel turned and saw her. For a moment, neither of them moved. His face did the thing that happens when a person has been carrying something carefully for a long time and is now watching it arrive at the person it was meant for, before the planned moment. A kind of startled completion. "Claire," he said. She couldn't speak. "I wasn't." He started. "I was going to show you when it was finished. I wanted it to be done first." "Whose house is this?" she said. Her voice was not quite right. He looked at her for a moment. "Your mum's," he said. She sat on an upturned crate in the unfinished kitchen while he explained. He had started looking at land 8 months ago, after the conversation about moving Ruth in. He had thought about it and decided that what Ruth needed, what she would actually accept without feeling like a burden, which he knew she would feel if she moved into their house, was her own home, something that was hers, that she hadn't come to because she had no choice. He had found the plot through a contact, bought it, found a builder who specialized in accessible construction, designed the layout with Ruth's specific mobility needs in mind, present and anticipated. "The account withdrawals," Claire said. "Building costs," Daniel said. "The late nights. Site visits. The builder can only meet in the evenings because of other projects." He paused. "I know how it looked. I kept thinking I had 1 more month until it was finished and I could just show you. And then 1 month became 2 months and—" "Daniel." Her voice broke on his name. He stopped talking. "The calls in the garage," she said. "The contractor and the oncologist's office, coordinating the treatment schedule so the house would be ready at the right stage." He looked at her. "Your mum's treatment is going well. Dr. Andrews said she has a strong chance of remission, but the next 6 months are going to be hard, and I wanted her to be somewhere she could be comfortable without feeling like she was in anyone's way." Claire pressed both hands over her face. "There's something else," Daniel said quietly. She looked up. He sat down on the crate beside her. "The house is paid for," he said. "The construction, the land, the medical equipment for the bedroom. All of it." "How?" Claire said, because she had been watching the account and the amounts were significant but not. "Daniel, that's not enough from what I saw in the account." He was quiet for a moment. "I sold the company," he said. She stared at him. 3 months ago. I had an offer. I'd had it for a while, actually, and I'd been turning it down because I wasn't ready. But when I looked at what your mum was facing and what it was going to cost and—" He stopped. "The timing worked. The offer was good. I accepted." "You sold your company," Claire repeated. "Yes. The company you spent 12 years building." "Yes. Without telling me." "I was going to tell you. I kept trying to find the right moment, and the right moment kept not arriving because I knew you'd argue with me about it. Of course I'd argue with you about it. I know." His voice was steady. "I knew that, which is why I wanted to have the whole thing done, the house, the funding, the treatment arranged, before I told you. So you couldn't talk me out of it." He paused. "You would have tried to talk me out of it." Claire looked at the man she had been building a case against for 3 weeks. The man she had been ready to confront with 14 data points of evidence. "I thought you were having an affair," she said. He looked at her. "I know," he said. "I could tell. I'm sorry. I should have found a way to tell you sooner." She looked at the unfinished kitchen around them, the wide doorways, the accessible design, the house her husband had built, in secret, for her mother. She broke completely. Not dramatically, just the specific, overwhelming collapse of someone who has been holding enormous tension for 3 weeks and has just had it replaced by something entirely different. Daniel put his arms around her and she pressed her face against his jacket. and he held her while she cried in the unfinished kitchen of the house he had built for her mum. In the dark, with the contractor discreetly disappeared to his van, and the flashlight left resting against the wall, throwing a single cone of light across the concrete floor. Like this video. If Daniel just restored your faith in people, that like button deserves to be hit right now. Do it. Subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? Now let me tell you how this ended. Ruth moved into the house in February. Claire and Daniel drove her there on a Saturday morning. Ruth had been told about the house 2 weeks before moving in. Daniel had insisted on telling her himself, which had taken 30 minutes and produced the specific response of an independent woman who cycles through refusing to accept things and then accepting them and then crying about them. Ruth had cried. Then she had said, "I can't accept this." Daniel had said, "It's already built." So, Ruth had looked at him for a long time. "You sold your company," she said. "I did." Daniel. "Ruth," he said, in the tone of someone who has thought about this carefully and is not going to be argued out of it. "You spent 30 years making sure Claire had what she needed. I've been her husband for 9 years, and I've been trying to catch up ever since." Ruth had pressed her lips together very hard. Then she had said, "I like the kitchen," which, from Ruth, was everything. The house worked exactly as designed, the ramp, the bathroom, the bedroom with the adjustable height bed that Daniel had researched with the same thoroughness he had applied to the company he had just sold. Ruth went through the next 6 months of treatment from a home that was entirely hers, where she could shut the door and be independent even on the days when independence was mostly a feeling rather than a reality. By September, Dr. Andrews used the word remission in the careful, qualified way of doctors, who have learned that hope is a thing to be given in measured amounts. Ruth planted a garden. Small, the accessible beds Daniel had also thought of, raised to a height she could reach. She planted tomatoes and herbs and a rose she had been trying to grow for 15 years and had never had the right soil for. The rose bloomed in October. Daniel found work again. Not immediately. He took 3 months, which he spent doing the things he had not had time to do for 12 years, including relearning how to sleep past 6 in the morning, which took longer than he expected. Then a former competitor approached him about a consultancy role that became, after 2 conversations, something larger. Claire, who had kept the 14-item list on her phone for 3 weeks after February, deleted it one evening while sitting at the kitchen table. She had looked at it once more before deleting. The late nights, the garage calls, the account withdrawals, and had thought about how a story can be built from entirely accurate data points that tell entirely the wrong story. She had thought about Daniel building a house in the dark, in secret, month by month, because he knew she would try to stop him, and he had decided that stopping him was the one thing she wasn't going to be able to do. She had thought about the ramp, the wide doorways, the kitchen Ruth said she liked. She deleted the list. Then she called Daniel in from the other room and said, "I love you," he said. "I love you too. What happened?" "Nothing," she said. "I just needed to say it." He sat down across from her. He looked at her the way he had always looked at her, with the specific attention of someone who finds the person across from them genuinely interesting and has never stopped. "Okay," he said. "Okay," she said. Claire had built a case against her husband from accurate evidence that told the wrong story. 14 data points, 3 weeks, a confrontation speech rehearsed in her head. And the truth was a half-built house on a quiet road with a concrete ramp where the steps should have been. The thing that gets me about this story is not just what Daniel did. It's how he did it. He chose secrecy not to deceive her but to protect the outcome from her own objections. He knew her well enough to know she would try to stop him, so he moved faster than she could. But here's the question I want you to think about. Was Daniel right to keep it secret? Or should he have told Claire what he was planning, even knowing she might have argued against it? Is it ever okay to do something good for someone without their knowledge and without their consent? Leave your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think. And tell me where you're watching from. Like this video. If Daniel's story restored something in you today, that like button is the least you can do for a story this good. Hit it, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe if you're not already. The next story is already coming, and you want to be here for it. See you then.